What's up, everybody? Happy Valentine's Day. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I had a whole other episode planned. It was pretty complex. I had a whole outline I'd been working on for a while. I was almost done, about to record as soon as I was done. And then I realized tomorrow is Valentine's Day. Oh no. We got to talk about that. We got to do something related to that. And so we're going to save that episode I was working on for next week or something. And I threw together this whole thing just for this episode. I'm giving you 10 hot takes on love. I threw this together, but this is also stuff like I've been thinking about for a while because I think about this stuff. I think about a lot of stuff on this podcast. Perhaps it's all about leaning into the type of world you want to see, which can include a broad amount of topics. Lately, I've been wanting to lean more into the idea of radical imagination in all the stuff I write about and talk about and put online. And so you're going to see some more of that come soon. But that includes a lot of different categories and topics that goes into spirituality, goes into society and politics and culture and even pop culture and creativity. And so these hot takes on love, they're kind of they're diverse. Okay, we got some theological takes, some political takes, some relationship takes. And then we're going to close it out with some overrated, underrated. And so let's start with some theological takes. Okay, stick around. Some of these takes you may be pretty surprised by. And so first one, the one doesn't exist. I told you these are some hot takes for Valentine's Day. And yeah, the one, it's one of those things where you just have to think about it. If you just think about it, I think that's a pretty easy conclusion to come to. But there's more to it than that. And I say you just kind of have to think about it because you think of the people who, take remarriage, for example. People find the one, then they get divorced, then they find somebody else. How do you reconcile that with the one? I have a friend who's a wedding videographer, and he told me how in all the weddings he's filmed, all the speeches he's filmed at these weddings, these beautiful romantic speeches given by the wedding officiator, given by the people in the wedding, given by the families of the wedding, and how so many of these speeches are so much about yes, God brought me to you. God brought me through my whole life and all the obstacles and everything I've been through just so I could be with you. And they're on their fourth wedding, their fourth marriage. And some of them would even include that within the narrative. God brought me through those people just so I can get to you, which is a little strange. And I grew up in evangelicalism, in this conservative Christian idea of marriage and relationships and love. There's this idea that God has one person out there that he wants you to marry, and you just got to figure it out. And so growing up in that environment, me and several other people my age, and also much older, were constantly questioning God. Is this the one? Is this the one that you called me to marry? And if it's not, then there's no reason to even start to pursue it, to even consider pursuing it, because you got a date for marriage, not for anything else. And if you even have an inkling that this might not be the one, then you got to walk away, because that's someone else's future spouse that you're messing with. And that whole thing, looking back, was so toxic and kept me in so much fear and stopped me and made me kind of a jerk to some girls when I was a kid and when I was a teenager. There was a few instances where I could have started a relationship that would have been cool, would have been good for me and good for the other person. But And we're talking, we're flirting. And then out of nowhere, I just stopped it and walked away. And looking back, that was such a huge jerk move. But the reason was because I would find something in them that I felt like, oh, I don't know if that's supposed to be the person that I'm supposed to marry. Let me walk away. And it was just, it was little things that I can't even remember, like about their attitude or something. And it was like, that was so strange. And then there was this one girl that I was dating, and that relationship started with, because each time I would consider dating someone, I would ask God, is this the person I'm supposed to marry? And typically I would feel like as if I heard no in somewhere in my mind. But with this girl, I felt like I heard yes. And I was so excited. And so we started dating. And we had a good time. And then maybe a year or less than a year later, she said that God told her we're not supposed to be together, and so we have to break up. And that's a classic thing in that evangelical world, especially with young people. It's basically like trying to persuade someone into a relationship by saying, God told me I'm supposed to marry you. And then breaking off that relationship with, God told me we're supposed to break up. And it's funny because even in that world, you can easily use those excuses and lie and know that you're lying. Because in a lot of those cases, I'm sure they genuinely feel like they heard those things. But also, like, it would become kind of a trope of like the sleazy dude in youth group who would tell multiple different girls, God told me I'm supposed to marry you. And then the next week, a different girl, God told me I'm supposed to marry you. And then also like the people who would be afraid of being honest about how they really feel in a relationship and just going the easy way out by saying, God said that we're not supposed to be together. That was the easy way out. And so I was crushed when I went through that breakup and very confused because I was like, this doesn't make sense. God told me we're supposed to be together, but God told her we're not supposed to be together. So it's like either both of us are wrong or only one of us is wrong. It's like either I heard from God and she didn't, or she heard from God and I didn't, or neither of us heard from God. Because it can't both be true. It can't be God told me one thing and God told her the opposite, and that doesn't make any sense. And so the conclusion I ended up coming to is that neither of us heard anything. Like it didn't make sense. And I kind of let go of that idea of God after that. And there was other things in my life, of course, different areas of suffering in my life and my family's life where it allowed me to slowly let go of that idea of God that I now look back on and see is very narrow and is usually just a projection of how we feel. And I let it go. And then even in the Bible, Jesus is asked a question. These group of men come up to him and say, hey, so we have this discourse we're having, this debate, intellectual debate about, let's say a man is married to a woman and then he dies and then his brother marries her, because that was like an ancient custom back in the day. When your brother's wife dies, you take her in and marry her. Because that was also about like making sure that she had a household she belonged to so that she's protected and has rights. Because if a woman didn't belong to a male's household, she didn't have any rights or way of taking care of herself in very patriarchal society. Anyway, the guys say, so if man marries a woman, he dies, she marries his brother, and then he dies, and then she marries his other brother, and then he dies. In the afterlife, who does she belong to? Whose wife is she? And it's like Jesus, I forget the exact verse, but Jesus basically is like, none of that matters. Like that's not a thing in the afterlife. And I look at that and I think that's so clear that like marriage is very much a cultural thing. It's a human thing. But beyond that, it's also just like a cultural thing. And our understanding of marriage is very cultural. And then we project those cultural norms onto the divine and assume God must have set it up this way. I also think that, like, people talk about the verses that are used against gay people and gay marriage, gay relationships, and debunk those verses, realize like they weren't talking about what we now know as gay relationships. And I'm in total agreement with that, that those verses actually aren't against gay people, and Christians should fully accept, embrace, and affirm gay people and gay relationships. But I think some of the verses that I don't hear used in those debates are verses like this one, where Jesus is like, oh yeah, this is basically a human thing. And if marriage and relationships is just like a human thing, then gay relationships should be cool too. It's like, let's say a woman marries a man and then he dies, and then marries another man and then he dies, and then this woman marries another woman. I don't think Jesus would stop and be like, oh wait, no, that time where she married a woman was wrong. They definitely won't be together in the afterlife. No, I think it would just be the same answer. Like, oh yeah, y'all are asking the wrong questions. Y'all are stressed about the wrong things. Also, marriage in the time of the Bible, from the beginning to the end, is totally about property. And like I said, in that context, women had to be with a household, a male household, either her father's or a husband's, in order to have any rights. That is also probably what Jesus has in mind when he condemns divorce so harshly. If you divorced your wife, you left her without a household and without any rights, and opened her up to being in abusive, exploitative ways of making money to survive. And so when he says like, don't divorce, that is the context he's thinking of when he says it. Like the type of abuse and violence and poverty that would happen to a woman if you divorced her makes it make a lot more sense why Jesus and his contemporaries saw divorce as so morally wrong. In today's context, divorce isn't like that. Marriage isn't really like that. And so to take some of these verses that are coming from a total different cultural context and to say that it aids in the argument for there being only one person you're supposed to marry forever is ridiculous. I spent way longer rather than I thought I would on that point. We still got 9 more takes. Next take, theological take. Jesus, let's keep talking about Jesus. Jesus may have been married. And, same take, Mary may have not been a virgin. Totally. No big deal. No worries. Yeah, some people think Jesus may have been married, but mostly some scholars believe it would be weird if he wasn't, because he was a 30-year-old Jewish man in the first century context where it would be weird for a 30-year-old Jewish man to not be married. I added in the Jewish because there was Jewish marital customs that were very, very ritualistic, and each man would follow. And I say 30 because by the time you're 30, you for sure would have already traded a donkey for a wife. You know, like there would be some sort of ritual like that would have happened already. It wasn't like, oh yeah, this is the other thing too when it comes to the way people use these ancient Bible verses about marriage to say something today about marriage and relationships. It was, what's the word? Organized marriage? Planned marriage? I forget the term. Let's just say organized marriages, where they were forced together. It wasn't like, just wait until you find the one you love. And that's the other reason, because marriage now in this cultural context is based on finding someone you love and vibing with them and seeing if you should get married or not, or just be in a relationship, that is a context that the Bible speaks nothing on, really. And I mean, of course, there's the verses about loving people in general and treating people right in general that could be used for modern context, but marriage, it's a very different world. And so, yeah, sure, Jesus may have been married. Mary, yeah, maybe she wasn't a virgin. I mean, there's some Christians who believe she was a virgin when she was pregnant with Jesus. And then after Jesus was born, she stayed a virgin and had his siblings. She had a few more kids, but still was a virgin. Maybe that's more of an extreme view. And a lot of Catholics believe that. Now, I don't think all Catholics do, but a lot of the ones with you might call it a high Mariology might say that. But the Protestant take is usually she was just a virgin with Jesus, and then she had sex with Joseph and had the other kids. But even with Jesus, she may not have been a virgin. It's possible that the verses that are used to argue that she's a virgin or could be interpreted a different way. Even Matthew may have done his own reinterpretation. He takes his verse in Isaiah that says, "Behold, a virgin pregnant with a child." And then he says, like, oh, this is Jesus fulfilling this prophecy in Isaiah. Isaiah, that word that's used for virgin could also be translated to young woman. Behold, a young woman pregnant with child. And also the Jewish idea of miraculous births throughout the entire Hebrew Bible was always a case where a woman was barren, prayed to God, had sex with her husband, then had a kid. There was no like virgin births. And so it's possible that an early understanding of Jesus's birth was more so that kind of miraculous birth, not she never had sex before type of thing. But maybe she was a virgin. Maybe. There's also, I could go way deeper in this on the virgin birth stuff. This goes way, way deeper, but this isn't what the episode is about. So I'm going to move on. But I'll say this. The idea that Jesus had to have been single his whole life, and it's heretical to think he may have had a relationship or a marriage, and the idea that Mary had to have been a virgin, and it's heretical to think otherwise, both, I would argue, are rooted in misogyny. It's like Mary can only be holy if she was a virgin, if she was pure from that kind of stuff. Or Jesus can only be holy if he never touched a woman. If he never had a sinful woman attached to him. It's like, it's as if that makes him more godly, which is strange because the whole point of the incarnation is that God became fully human. Fully. So sure, he may have been married. No big deal. Let's move on. Last theological take. Most scripture about God being all powerful is just romantic poetry. Now we're getting real spicy for some of you out there. I know a lot of you would probably be like, yeah, okay, sure. Y'all are like me who are able to have big imaginations and not be so hung up on some of these things. But some Christians, they need their omnis. What do I mean by omnis? Well, there's some theological ideas about who God is, such as God being omnipotent or omnipotent, which means all powerful. Omni means all or total. And God being omniscient, which means all knowing, or God being omnipresent, which means God being all present, present everywhere, or even God being perfect. A lot of this language comes from the Psalms, which are all songs, poetry, a lot of metaphor, a lot of love songs to God. And that's what these praise songs really are. And I would argue these are terms that shouldn't be taken as literal theological doctrine, but more so as terms of romantic endearment. Because also, throughout the Bible, there's contradictions about if God really is all powerful, if God really does have all the power, or does God share some of that power with humans, with creation? I think there's a better argument for that. Or is God all knowing? Or is time actually more open than that? Is the future actually more open? Is God actually experiencing this life at the same time with us, along with us? I think there's a better argument for that, both biblically and scientifically, and the way we actually experience the world. And I think this idea that time is just this one long, pre-written, predetermined thing is an ancient idea that has been challenged. And I think we can open up our imagination a bit on that. And is God really omnipresent? There's parts in the Bible where people are hiding from God. Is God really perfect? Well, our idea of perfection is so culturally based, so human based. Usually our idea of perfection is, what are the things I wish I was? What are the skills I wish I had? God must be that. If God was perfect, why would God's perfection be based on what we think perfection is? It doesn't really make sense. And so I believe a better way of understanding those ideas is that these are terms of romantic endearment in the same way that we intentionally exaggerate when we express our love to people we love, to our romantic partners, to our beloveds, when we say things like, "You are all I need," or "You complete me," or even, "You're literally perfect." How many of you have told someone that? You're perfect. You're literally perfect. When we say things like that, we know that we don't literally mean it. A lot of times it's impossible to literally mean it. But when I say we don't literally mean it, it's not because we love them less than what we're expressing in these extreme, exaggerated romantic endearments. It's because we actually love them even more than any words can possibly express. And the only way we can convey that is through these extreme, exaggerated endearments that don't make any logical sense. But it's the best we can do. Every romantic endearment fails at capturing how much we really love someone. And yet it's all we have. It's all we have. And so that's why we repeat them over and over and over and over, because it's the best we can do to express how wide our love truly is. And I think the same exact thing is happening in these Psalms and in these other Bible verses where people are expressing to God in songs of praise, God is perfect. God is so perfect. God is almighty, all powerful. God is all knowing. You know everything. You are everywhere. There's nowhere I can go where I can hide from you. You knew me since I was in the womb. You're all I need. Without you, I'm without want with you, God. This is poetry. This is romantic poetry. All right, let's move on from the theological takes. Let's go to the political takes, shall we? Let's get even spicier. The nuclear family. Let's take a drink of water before. It's getting a little too spicy. The nuclear family is an invention based on property rights. Yep, I said it. The nuclear family, by the way, let me break down for those that may not know, it is simply just a household of one father, one mother, and a couple kids. And it's also, the nuclear family is also a concept that says this is the best way to raise a family. And even in a more extreme sense, this is the only way to raise a family. And if anyone tries to raise a family outside of that, then they must be persecuted. It's definitely a more extreme way of understanding the nuclear family that we've seen in some societies in some time periods. But it's at least this is the best way. And property also is an invention by humans. Another thing that I would imagine God being like, oh yeah, that's just a human thing. Totally a human thing. Think about it. We all have been given this world full of its resources to share. And this idea that I can take resources or take objects or take land and own them and no one else can, and I can exploit these resources to make money off of it. That's such a human thing. And is always based in theft of some sort. To say this land, this resource can only be mine and not yours, and you have to pay me for it, is inherently theft if this world and its resources are meant for all of us. Then you add people to that, still like just as much theft, just as exploitative, or I mean, as a human myself, I would say even more exploitative. But this idea that like, okay, I'm going to buy a man, I'm going to buy a woman from a man, and that's going to be my wife, and she's going to have kids for me, and these kids are going to work on our household and our property and the family business. That is an ancient idea that continued to spread throughout the world and made people think that that's the only way. And yet we find other societies, more ancient, but also continued well into the time that even continues to this day, where it was so communally based, where there was no one man, one woman, and the woman belonged to the man, and then they had kids. Rather, they would have a kid, and then the community would raise the kids. And one could even argue this is a better way to raise children. And I think we're starting to see the truth of that in this increasingly individualistic, atomized, isolated society, where people struggle to provide for their kids as we become more and more and more independent and lose community, lose resources, lose opportunities. And I think it makes a lot of sense that kids are able to thrive more when they have a community that they can depend on. And so I think what we're seeing is that idea that the nuclear family is the only way starting to break just based on reality, just based on people's experiences of trying so hard to make it work and realizing there's got to be a different way. There's got to be another way. And so I think we're going to continue seeing that, and it's going to be exciting. Let's move on. Of course, each of these takes, I could go so much longer, but I'm trying not to. I'm trying to get through all these takes. So next one. The meaning of life is a romantic category. Think about that one while I take a drink of water. Oh no. I spilled some water on my shirt. I'm getting too excited. Now this, I am excited to talk about because I'm actually talking about this in my next book that I'm writing right now. A lot of it is about meaning of life. It's going to be awesome. But when I say meaning of life, I mean, when we go through life feeling like there needs to be a reason that I'm here, like almost as if it's outside of myself, that there is this cosmic reason for me being born and me existing and me walking this earth, and I need to find it. And once I find it, then I'll be satisfied. Then I'll be fulfilled. Then I could start really living. That's an idea that a lot of people have. And I think it leads to a lot of discouragement constantly. For the people who find that supposed meaning, they're happy for a bit, and then it starts to get tiring. They start to lose their passion, or they get passionate about something else, and it gets really confusing. Like, wait, I thought this was the reason I'm here. Or people, many people, go throughout their whole life feeling like they never find it. And it leads to so much discouragement and feeling like such a failure. How come everyone else is able to find their thing, but I'm not? But I think what's more helpful is if we can understand the concept of meaning, not as something ahead of us that we have to pursue and catch, rather as something here, right now, that is already occurring simply because we exist. We are meaning, and we are meaning makers by simply living. Meaning, or reason for life, is simply to live. You are here. Now live. You are here. Pay attention to your life around you and see the ways that you can respond to give more life to the people around you, to the world around you. And think of it more like a romantic relationship. This is what I mean by it's a romantic category. I think it makes a lot more sense. Meaning makes a lot more sense when you think of it in the same way you think of the reasons you love the person you love. Why do you love them? Is there some big cosmic reason that led you to loving them? Or is it because you just freaking love them? It can't be explained. It can't be reduced to a reason. And when you act, when you take action to show your love for the person you love, it isn't so that you can pursue something else outside of yourself ahead of you and capture it. It's because you feel the love presently and you respond to the love you feel presently by doing something for the person you love. Not so you could get something out of it. Not as a means to an end, but as an end in itself. Simply because you love them. Simply because you enjoy loving them. And so think about your actions day to day that you can do simply without a reason, without some big cosmic pursuit, but simply because you're here and you can. You're going to die someday. I got a painting back there that says, you're going to die someday, I promise. I'll talk about that painting someday. But there's stories behind it. But you're going to die someday, so live. Think of it more as a romance. Got it? Let's keep going. Let's do some relationship takes. Are you ready, friends? It gets increasingly more and more spicy hot takes as we go through this. All right, next take. A lot of men. By the way, okay, let me preface this. Sorry, I gotta preface this. When I say men, because I can only speak about men, really, with authority. Any sort of authority, the little authority I have, because I'm a man. I'm also a cisgender man. And so in this hot take, I'm really speaking about cisgender men, okay? Let's also straight cis men. A lot of them feel like they can't get a woman because they are only focused on what a woman can do for them. There's a lot of lonely men out there. Even a lot of incels out there. A lot of angry, lonely men who feel slighted by the universe and by society for not being able to find someone to be romantic with. And yet, when you dive into some of the rhetoric from some of these men, what I often see is that it keeps coming back to them and them alone. I mean, the person, their ego, really, which is, you hear a lot of talk of, I don't get it. I'm such a good guy. I'm such a nice guy. I have a good job. I make money. I'm cool. I have skills. I think of Napoleon Dynamite. Like, I just don't have any good skills. I got some good skills. I dress nice. I smell nice. I look nice. How come no woman wants to be with me? As if a woman is a reward for being presentable or being a cool guy, being a chill guy. Here's a trophy for being such a chill guy, bro. That doesn't work like that. If you want to be in a relationship, it has to also be about the other person. For so many of you, it's like, yeah, duh. I thought you were going to tell me something informative in this podcast, Damon. Why are you giving me the most simple takes ever? But for a lot of other people, they need this revelation more than they realize. That getting into relationships should begin with, yeah, sure, some of it being like, oh, I think this person would be really awesome for me in my life, but also considering how you can be a gift to their life as well. It shouldn't be, oh yeah, I need this person in my life because they would help me like de-stress. They would give me someone to like talk to about like some of the things I'm going through. They would help me feel this. They would help me do that. There's a lot of people that's all they think about in terms of relationships. But I think a good sign that you should be, or that you should consider beginning a relationship with someone, is if you also feel like, I really want to be in their life. I would feel so lucky and excited if I can be a part of their life. If I could be a part of what they're doing, if I could be a support and encouragement to them, I would be so happy. That's how a relationship should begin. All right, straight cis dudes. and kind of within a similar vein to that point, here's the next take. Girls just want to have fun. It's true. The song is one of the most accurate songs of all time. But also, really, people just want to have fun. I think there's a lot of people out there, especially straight cis men, who feel like I need to impress somebody in order to get them to date me or to get them to recognize how awesome I am and to like me. I need to show them how cool I am, how good I am, how nice I am, and then they'll be interested. And then when they're not interested, they get angry. It's like, what's wrong? I don't understand. Or some people will feel like, if I could just show them how serious I am about how much I want to be with them, then they'll understand. And so they pull them aside and like, look, I got to talk to you. I made this mistake once with a girl a long time ago. And at the time, I thought it was the most logical thing to do. I had a friend that suggested, if you want to like be with that girl, just tell her how you feel, man. And so I did it, and it was so serious. Like, I just like want to tell you that I think I'm starting to have feelings for you, and I'm wondering if you feel the same. And looking back, I think I just looked like a creep. I mean, it was my friend, and it was chill. Like it was she wasn't interested, and it was chill, and we're still friends. But looking back, I realized like I put her in such an awkward position. I had another friend that also was with this girl in a very like serious environment, just like broke down and said like, I'm in love with you and I love you so much and blah, blah, blah. But I bring all this up to say like, this is the opposite of fun. All this approach scares people away, not because nice guys finish last and people don't like nice people anymore and people only like bad people now. No. It's because it just feels so overwhelming and too serious, and like it could just potentially be more stress. I think a lot of people, when they're looking for a romantic partner, they're looking for someone who can help take away some of the overwhelming stress in their life. And if someone shows signs that they could potentially bring even more stress to their life, it's like immediate no, immediate ick. If you're gonna be this super serious guy, or this guy who's always trying to impress me, always trying to be overly nice, and it's like this isn't the fun that I'm looking for. And then I also think of like, oh man, there was those old, I don't know if they're still a thing, those old like dating coach things that I would see pop up where it was like, I promise I never went down this this rabbit hole, but this was a meme that came from that world. The concept of negging, where it's like there's legit these creep dating coaches would tell guys, you just have to like make fun of and criticize, neg meaning like negative, like say negative statements toward the girl about her, and that will get her to want to like impress you and get her to want you to like her, which is so silly. But I was thinking about this recently, like, what does that come from? Because you would see some guys in that world say it does work, and then other guys be like, what the hell, it totally backfired. But I think what it really is having fun. I think some like making fun of a girl when you're talking to her, like there's a way, or making fun of anyone when you're flirting with them. Like there is that fun, flirtatious way to do it, where you're just having fun, being funny, you're not taking things seriously. And I think the most important part when you're doing that is to not take yourself seriously, and make fun of yourself too. And it's just have a fun conversation, not to be mean, not to insult them. But I think, I bet you, this is all speculation, I bet you there's dudes out there who followed that negging advice and were able to do it in that fun, flirtatious way and come away from it thinking negging is the way, without realizing, no, it's just being fun and funny and flirtatious is the way. And then told other guys, negging worked for me, bro. And then they try it and it's like, oh my God, this totally didn't work. People just want to have fun. That's what it's all about. Let's go to the next hot take. New category. We're going over under here. 3 more takes. Over under. Underrated or overrated? Okay. Romantic dramas. Romantic movies. Underrated or overrated? What do y'all think? Let me take a drink of water. My take? Underrated. Underrated. This is coming from a movie nerd, okay? And I used to not dig these types of movies. I don't think I was ever a hater on them. They were just never on my radar, and I stayed away from them. But I think there's a lot of movie nerds out there that need to grow up and realize that just because a movie is predictable doesn't make it bad. I hate that criticism so much, y'all. I hate when I hear that. I've heard people say that about all kinds of movies, horror movies too. Oh man, I hate it. We'll talk about a movie. Hey, did you see this movie? Did you see this movie? Oh yeah, I love that movie. And then they'll say, I didn't like it because it was predictable. Like, I knew the whole time that it was going to end with blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, but it was good. And I knew how it was going to end too. But it was about the way they did it. It was about the way it unfolded, the way they told the story. And I think that's a very, very, very childish critique of art, of stories, movies, books, to say, I knew how it was going to end. I knew that those two characters were going to end up together. I knew the good guy was going to beat the bad guy in the end. So it was a bad movie. Childish. Childish. Grow up. Okay? Grow up. Grow up. Grow up. Please. Please. Oh my God. So anyway, romantic movies. The most predictable genre, story-wise. But it's about the story. It's about letting it unfold. It's about going through the emotions. It's like a roller coaster. You know how a roller coaster is going to go. You know how the roller coaster is going to end. But it's about going through the motions and emotions that come with the motions, my friends. Experience life. Feel something, damn it. I just want to... Oh my God. I'm internally screaming at all these fellow movie nerds who haven't grown up yet. Okay, so Past Lives, by the way, that's a recent romantic movie I've seen. Oh my God. Past Lives. And that actually might be a little unpredictable story-wise for some of you movie nerds out there who care about that stuff. Oh my God, that's all I'll say. Past Lives was such a good movie. Romantic movie. What's another romantic movie? I haven't been able to see that many movies lately, so I'm struggling to remember right now. But there's some that I've been wanting to see that I haven't had the chance to. But anyway, let's move on. Over under. Having children. What do you think, y'all? Overrated or underrated? Having children. My take is it's a little overrated. Now, I'm not a full-on anti-natalist. I sympathize with that perspective for sure. I get it. If you don't know what antinatalism is, it doesn't really matter. We don't need to get into that. It's basically just the belief that having children in this world full of so much suffering is inherently unethical. We don't need to get into that philosophy right now, but honestly, it's more personal for me. I don't think I can handle having a kid. And I also acknowledge, I saw some clip of some comedian say that he doesn't want kids. He was like an older guy too. And he said something like he heard someone say that creative people, especially creative people who are able to do well and put their stuff out there and get a lot of positive feedback, most of them don't want kids. And the theory that he had was it might be because they've already fulfilled that like internal desire to leave a mark on the world, to put something out beyond yourself and affect other people. And maybe some people still have that desire to have kids because they don't have anything else like that in their life. Something that feels like I'm going to leave a mark on the world beyond myself and give myself to something beyond myself and serve something beyond myself, serve this other person, this child that I'm working for and living for. If you have something else like that in your life, I would just say I think the desire for children just decreases. I don't think it would completely go away. And I don't think that's the only reason people want kids. But I think there's something there that I think also influences my desire to have kids decreasing more and more and more over the years. Also, I'm single. So I also met, and I've been single for a while because I've just been focused on a lot of different things. For years now. I've been single, but for years it's been this like idea of there have been seasons of my life where I felt like, oh, maybe I would like a partner, but then time passes and I look back on that season where I was desiring a romantic partner, and I think to myself, oh my God, I'm so glad I wasn't dating anyone. I'm so glad I was single during that whole time period, because I would have been super neglectful, because like I was dealing with a lot of stress and projects and things going on in my life. And I think paired with that is a feeling like if I had someone, this would maybe be easier. But then looking back, it was like, oh no, I wouldn't have been able to really give myself to a relationship the way that I should. That's happened again and again over the last few years. But yeah, it's chill. I'm chill. I'm just a chill guy. But what was my point? Oh yeah, I was gonna say maybe if I was with someone who wanted a kid, and we were more financially stable, it would make more sense and I would find a reason to want a kid. But right now, nah, I don't see the appeal at all. I went to New Orleans. I said that so casually, but it's true. I went to New Orleans recently, back in July, for this conference that I spoke at. And on my flight back, it got delayed and then canceled because there was this big hack or a system error. I don't think it was a hack. I don't know what it was, but a big system error where a bunch of flights got canceled, and I was a part of that. And so I got stuck in New Orleans, and I had to wait that night in line for like 4.5 hours. Yeah, it was exactly 4.5 hours to get a rescheduled flight and also a voucher to get in a hotel room. And so I was so exhausted. And the earliest flight they were able to get me was like 3 days after that. And they said, we can only give you one voucher at a time for a hotel room. You have to come back tomorrow for another voucher. They also gave me some food vouchers. I was like, and so I was able to get a hotel room for one night only with that voucher. And so I got to the hotel room extremely late, or rather early in the morning. I had to get a little bit of sleep, wake up to check out of the hotel room, take all my stuff back to the airport, stood in line for another 4.5 hours. Same situation, got a new hotel room. It was so chaotic, and then had to do it again. And it was just like all these things where I was so exhausted and so out of it too. Like my body was failing me and I couldn't think straight, and it was miserable. And then on that last day, I had a thought of, this must be what being a parent feels like, which is this just like constant stress with no sleep. Like, that's all I could think about is I'm so happy I'm not a parent. Oh my God, I can't live like this. I can't live on no sleep. Also at the time was unhealthier. So maybe that had something to do with it now that I think more about it. And when I say unhealthier, a big thing I'm thinking of, I've been doing a lot of stretching over the last few months. That has like changed my freaking life, yo. I didn't realize how tense and stressed my whole body was, how tight different parts of my body were, or different feelings, emotions I would have that were based on the tightness throughout my body. It's been a life changer. But anyway, I'm thinking back on that of like, I wonder if I wouldn't have been so exhausted back then if I was doing my stretches, you know? But oh man. And you can't get out of it. There's no breaks. You can't have a vacation from being a parent. Oh my God. And then people say like, then your kid is born and you'll be overwhelmed with this feeling of love and realize, oh my God, all I want to do is live for this child. I love this child more than anything I could ever thought I could feel. But then there's people out there who don't get that feeling. And I'm honestly scared of what if I'm one of those guys? Like, there's no guarantee that I'm going to be one of the people that gets that overwhelming love feeling where everything clicks together and makes sense. I may be one of those people who don't get that feeling and are super confused. They're like, oh, snap, it never came. I kind of want to get out of here. I might be one of those guys, to be honest. This is why I'm single, yeah. I'll just plan around. I'm being a bit hyperbolic as I talk about this, but I still stand true. Having children, overrated. Last and final take on this wonderful Valentine's Day. Thank you so much, everybody, for sticking around and spending some time with me this Valentine's Day or this Valentine's Day week, whenever you're listening to this. This last take is the spiciest, by the way. The last overrated, underrated. But I do want to make clear that I love y'all, okay? On this Valentine's Day. I really appreciate all of you who have been tuning into this podcast, listening to the audio anywhere you listen to it, but also watching it on this brand new YouTube channel that I just started just for the podcast. Make sure you leave a comment and a rating, a review, all that fun stuff. And follow me on Instagram at whoisdamon. Subscribe, like and subscribe, y'all. Turn on the notifications wherever you're listening to this or watching this. I really appreciate it, for real. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Final take, underrated or overrated? Friendship love. What do y'all think? Friendship love. I think you know what I'm going to say. My take is it is extremely underrated. Y'all, I've been through a lot of different community changes over the years. I grew up in evangelicalism. I was an evangelical minister. There's a whole different type of community you get in that world. And there's a type of intimacy in that world, especially if you're like a minister and you're responsible for gathering community. And you're in a community where people really value their leaders. And I was experiencing a type of camaraderie and intimacy and loyalty that constantly made me feel really valued and really loved. And then when I left that world, I struggled to find that again. And now there's two sides to this. One side is I had to come to terms with the fact that some of that love and intimacy and loyalty I experienced in that evangelical minister environment can't be experienced elsewhere because that type of love I had experienced was based on hierarchy. I was experiencing more love and more loyalty from the people around me because I was a leader, and I was specifically a leader in this Christian environment where that was an important value, to love and value your leaders. And so I had to come to terms with that. Like, now you got to be like everybody else, Damon. Now you got to make friends the way everybody else makes friends. But then the other side to it is that type of love and loyalty and intimacy is able to be found elsewhere. You can find it. It is a lot harder, definitely, especially in this increasingly individualistic society. But you can find it. And fortunately, I have been able to find that again. Right after I left that world in 2017, I was fortunate enough to have a lot of artist friends at the time, since high school, really. Junior high, actually. And after that, I fully leaned in on my artist friends. And I'm so happy that they're there for me. And they've shaped me in wonderful ways, even shaped the way that I approach this work that is around this theological or spiritual or political stuff, where they're not really involved in this part of my life. But they still help me so much in the way that I approach this stuff. And so I think what I've found in times where I do feel lonely, or times where I do feel like, oh, I wish I had someone, like a romantic partner or something, I've thought about it and realized, actually, I just want intimacy often. And you could get that in a lot of ways outside of romance, outside of that kind of thing. You get that in community. It's different for sure. But I think we should think deeper about these kinds of things. And so, my friends, go out there, find your community or build community, show your love to those around you, embrace those who love you, accept that they love you without understanding why, and have a good Valentine's Day and Valentine's week. Thank you for listening. Those are my spicy takes. Bye-bye.